Let's speak to James Price. James, of course, former Conservative advisor. It's interesting, James, isn't it, just watching the House of Lords. You've worked over there in Parliament. When I was in the press gallery, I used to quite like nipping over to the upper house, have a little test of what democracy looked like with the older guys. And sometimes it's rather interesting, and sometimes it's rather intelligent, and sometimes you can see the purpose of it all. But I did get a sense, looking at what happened yesterday, that this was more about politics than it was about democracy.
It's a difficult thing these days, I suppose, with the House of Lords. The Constitution was really pushed to breaking point in those Brexit years without a kind of clear majority in the lower house, in the elected house, in the House of Commons. Peers who hated Brexit so much tried to take a real advantage of the situation to cause as many problems as they possibly could. You know, we've got to remember that the Liberal Democrats for a long time have had their stated policy that we should abolish the House of Lords and replace it with an elected Senate, which sounds deeply un-British and frankly kind of frightful to me. And I think that's actually been Labour's policy in the last two manifestos under Corbyn as well. So this is the problem, that you've got these people, they get the ermine, they get all the lovely benefits, they get access to government ministers and all these other kinds of things. But their real stated approach actually is to get rid of the whole thing, and therefore they don't really mind damaging the British Constitution, unwritten as it is, and the Lords itself and Parliament in order to pursue other political ends.
But of course they would say that, well, actually, you know, the purpose is we are the kind of testing. You know, we take the policy from the Commons, we look at it and we debate it, and the concept of a second house, whether it's the awful Senate idea or whether it's what we have and the various other models around the world, that in itself, notionally, that's quite a good idea, that you objectively remove it from its original debating chamber and you take it to another one. They have a little look over it. Oh, you missed this bit, or you should have included that, etc. So on paper, the principle seems to work. Those who are in favour of Rwanda, who are in favour, sorry, of the House of Lords ruling on Rwanda, will say this was democracy in action. It's exactly what it's meant to do.
Yeah, the House of Lords, I think, is the second largest legislative body in the whole world after the Politburo of the Chinese Communist Party. Unfortunately, not everybody is mandated to have to go at gunpoint like they maybe are in China. And it's full of all sorts of experts, not just old party apparatchiks, although the House of Lords has quite a few of all of those as well. And so there is a broad range of expertise. I think most of what it does, what I saw when I worked there, is fantastic. You can get real experts in, and you can take your time, have some breathing space around the legislation, go through it all line by line in a way that you just can't in the Commons. For various kinds of different reasons, politics getting in the way is one of them. I think the problem that we're going to get into if we're not careful is that the difficulties that the government is finding around Rwanda is all to do with really thorny issues of international law and human rights legislation, the ECHR, all these kinds of things. And the House of Lords gets thrown into that kind of bucket as being unelected and getting in the way of the will of the people, which itself is increasingly in the modern world a kind of quite powerful political force as well. Certainly in the last, 10 years or so, we've had 3 big referendums. And so this is where we start to get these problems. And the Lords may start making a rod for their own back if they're being seen as being too deliberately obstructive rather than being constructive when it comes to actually finessing this kind of policy. No one can say that the need for the government to try and reinforce its borders much more strongly than it's currently seemingly able to do is anything other than a massive priority. And if you're seen getting in the way of that, rather than just trying to make it better and easier, then I think that's a real problem in the eyes of the people.
Indeed. I think you're right, James. Thank you very much indeed. And, of course, very tricky to get away from the reality that the person appeared to be leading that debate, Lord Goldsmith, getting high and mighty about human rights abuses, is trousering 300,000 quid from the Azerbaijan government. I think that whiff of hypocrisy is a little more than poignant in this particular case.